There is nothing random about whatever kind of disease or condition that you've developed. There's nothing random about, what is called an autoimmune condition. The body does not do random things. Dr. Hammer, which is the German medical doctor who made this discovery of these 5 natural biological laws of nature that revealed to me, just the depth of wisdom within the body.
Right.
There's always a reason. Nature has a reason. And we have looked at what the body is doing out of context for hundreds of years. And out of context, it looks like, oh, random cells are growing. Oh, the body's attacking itself. And so we try to intervene and we try to stop it. We try to, give the body drugs and do all sorts of things to make this thing stop happening. But with Dr. Hammer's discoveries, we see this is happening for a reason. And we have to get to the cause. We have to look at what was it that initiated this adaptive process in the psyche brain organ. And by resolving that conflict, that's how you get back to homeostasis, which is health, which is balance. And so the first biological law, psyche brain organ, something happens, something catches you off guard. And the big distinction here is it's not just stress, because a lot of people are like, oh, stress and disease. Okay, I get it. It's not as simple as that. It is more profound and impactful, like the conflict shock moment where you're caught off guard. You feel totally isolated in that moment. You feel totally alone, completely caught off guard, on the wrong foot. And that's what, boom, kind of sets off this adaptation process. So how the psyche perceives it, and that's not just the mind. That's not the thing that's thinking inside of your head. It's like the deep biological wisdom of your entire being. And so that wisdom makes an assessment of the situation that you're dealing with before you even have a chance to have any cognition about it. Before you're having thoughts about it, it's already in motion. The body has this language that it perceives before words in your head appear. And so it's initiated there. There's an impact in the brain. And that's one of the really cool, amazing things about this work is that via CT brain scan, you can actually have your brain mapped out entirely and we can see all the stuff that's happened to you in your life. There are impacts in the brain that control different regions, different portions of the body. And so psyche, brain, and then organ. That's where the adaptation happens. And the adaptation basically can be fit under 3 categories. Either there's tissue loss. So for example, if there's something stuck in your throat, the throat needs to widen, or it needs to produce more mucus or saliva in order for whatever's there to be able to get down or to come up. And so we're either going to be losing cells, widening openings, increasing cells so we can produce more juices, or there's loss of function. And so that's basically how the first biological law, how we can understand what's happening, the shock, the adaptation cascade, and then that persists. And then we can get into the second biological law if you want to pause for any questions.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's making me think how does someone even discover all of this? It's so wild to me and interesting to really learn all those connections and understand those connections is just, it's just amazing. So I was thinking in terms of conflict, have you ever worked with somebody where they don't know what the conflict is? They can't actually make that connection between their disease state and the conflict that happened or the trauma?
Sometimes it's tough because sometimes it happened a very, very long time ago. And then once you start stacking conflicts, Dr. Hammer discovered something else incredible called Constellations, which is when we have conflicts that are impacting opposite sides of the brain in the cerebral cortex. And this is what is the cause of what we call mental illness. So schizophrenia, depression, all sorts of, psychiatric conditions, OCD, autism. It has to do with the brain and the sequence of the conflicts. And so sometimes it can get really messy because life is long and we have a lot of stuff that happens to us. But once you kind of at least have the categories, we know where to look. And one of the things that I rely on is the fact that your nervous system knows, the deeper wisdom within you knows, your intuition can access this information. And sometimes the information is buried so deeply because it shouldn't be touched. There are some conflicts that it happens so early and it impacted your psyche in such a way where there's kind of there's imbalance, but things have stacked up and now it's balanced. And so there are actually some
Got
things
it.
you don't want to disturb, that you just want to, kind of let them be as it is. And you can learn to downgrade. And the cool thing about like constellations, for example, is it's what makes us quirky. It's what makes people so interesting and access, certain types of creative states and, writing flows. There's something called mythomanic. I mean, it's just the coolest stuff. And so, yes, sometimes it's hard to recollect like in your memory because,
For sure.
even like, for example, like a separation conflict, part of the biological program is short-term memory loss. So you actually forget the thing that you wanted to separate from. So there's purpose even behind the things that you can't remember. But I always recommend, sometimes people start getting stressed out about it. What if I can't remember? What if I can't? It's like that reaction. Right. Let's downgrade that. It's like whatever you need to see, you will be able to see. And sometimes it helps to have, another party, someone like asking you questions to bring certain things up. But trusting in the big picture that you can use this information to improve what it's like to be you, to improve your health, to downgrade symptoms. So the second biological law is the law of two phases. And this is amazing. There's so much, it's math, and that's the cool thing about the universe and the biological laws in nature is like there is math going on here at this kind of quantum amazing level. And so we have a normal day-night rhythm. And so normally during the day, the body is more sympathetic active. We're out hunting, we're gathering, we are, sustaining our survival. And then in the evening, that's the rest and digest. That's the parasympathetic, right. Also the feed and breed. And so normal day-night rhythm, that's just how it goes. The moment you have a conflict shock, the body shifts into heightened sympathetic activity. And so that's when the adaptation is actively happening. This is when those cells are building or the cells are decreasing or the function is decreasing. And that adaptation, it's in response to what you're experiencing. So you're going to have like chronic thinking about whatever the issue is, this unresolved right. conflict. You're waking up like at 2 or 3 in the morning, just like wide awake with this thing on your mind. Hands are cold, feet are cold, digestion slow. So these are a lot of the indications. Gosh, I'm in conflict right now. Like I know if I wake up at 3 a.m., there's something unresolved. There's something right. going on. Right. And in those moments, typically like when you're in the conflict active phase, like 60 to 80% of conflicts, you're not even going to know. You're not going to feel any symptoms yet. It's just going to be the preoccupied thinking, the cold right. hands. There's going to be some indications, but you're not going to know like which organ exactly is involved. I have gotten to the point though where I can kind of like I can tell if I'm in a conflict where I'm feeling soiled and I'm building what will eventually be a zit. I can tell when I'm in a conflict and I'm actively that there's tissue eroding. Even I'm, and this is, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, are you just like, because you know this and you're thinking about it, are you kind of making those feelings up?
Right. But are you like manifesting this? Yeah.
Yeah. But I can even feel things like, feeling too slow, like is related to the thyroid. I'm like, I feel like I can tell that my thyroid is like increased in function right now. And then, when the conflict resolves, I can feel it going back. And so, so during the conflict, you're not necessarily feeling symptoms, but you're feeling stressed, you're feeling worried, you're feeling preoccupied about the thing. And so that persists for as long as the conflict goes on. And this is as long as it's not resolved, as long as you don't have kind of a conclusion to the story. But when the conclusion comes, when you get the phone call, when you get the text, when you get the information, there's that sigh of relief. And then the body says, okay, now it's time. We were in conflict for 3 days. Now we need to heal. And there's going to be a minimum of 3 days of you being in the tissue restoration mode. So if tissue was lost, now it needs to be restored and built up. If tissue was built up, now it needs to be decomposed. If function was lost, we need to restore function. And so that's what's happening. During the healing phase, there are 2 phases. There's phase A. And so this is when you are tired, swollen, inflamed, exhausted, pain, headache, because the area in the brain, in addition to the area on the organ, the brain has to heal too. And so this is when there's pressure in your head and you feel the headache and you just
You're describing me right now. You're describing what I just went through. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is when I'm sick. And so this is why this work totally changes your language, your interpretation of your symptoms, because you're not sick in these moments. You weren't sick even when you were stressed and in conflict activity. There's no such thing as sickness, really, because you're either adapting or you're healing. You're either adapting or repairing from the adaptation. Neither of those things are sick. Sick implies wrong. Sick implies something bad is going on, but nothing bad is going on. You had an experience. You reacted to that experience. Your body adapted to that experience, and now it's setting you back to normal. And so that's why, like, getting rid of the idea of like, there's something wrong, bad, just because you don't feel well doesn't mean that something wrong is going on. But that's typically when people run to the doctor, run to the medicine cabinet, run to, their remedy of choice to reverse. If my fever's high, I have to bring it down. If I've got diarrhea, I need to stop it. If I can't go, I need to make it go. And so we try to use chemical means to reverse what's going on, rather than this model helps you to like really understand what's happening and why.